My name is Ethan Miller, and I am 21 years old living in Austin, Texas. My life used to feel pretty ordinary, just navigating college trying to figure things out like most people my age. I had a girlfriend, we had been together for a while, and even though she went away for college in another state, we were trying to make the long-distance thing work. It was hard, of course, missing her, not having her around for the simple things, but we talked every day, we video chatted, we visited when we could, or at least I did. I was invested, I really thought she was the one I was picturing a future, the whole bit. But even through the rose-tinted glasses of being in love there were cracks I couldn't ignore, not forever anyway. She had a way of twisting things, making me feel like I was crazy for pointing out problems or expressing how I felt. If I was upset about something she did, somehow I was the one who ended up apologizing. She was emotionally and verbally abusive. Looking back now it's so clear, but when you're in it it's like a frog in slowly boiling water. You don't realize how bad it is until it's almost too late. Manipulation was her go-to weapon of choice. It was constant subtle jabs that chipped away at my self-worth. She could be cruel, saying things that cut deep, then act like she was just joking or I was being too sensitive. The gaslighting was probably the worst, making me question my own reality, my own memory. She would deny saying things I distinctly remembered or make me feel guilty for things I didn't do. We would have a conversation, and 5 minutes later she would swear it never happened or say I completely misunderstood it. It left me feeling constantly confused and insecure, always walking on eggshells. It was exhausting trying to maintain the relationship while also trying to maintain my sanity. Every phone call felt like a test, every argument left me drained for days. But I loved her, or I thought I did, or maybe I was just addicted to the drama, the constant ups and downs. It's hard to disentangle those feelings when you're young and inexperienced with relationships. I kept telling myself that the distance was the problem, that if we were together things would be better. I clung to that hope that one day we'd be in the same city again and all the difficulties would disappear. I made excuses for her behavior, rationalized it away, telling myself she was stressed with school or just having a bad day. I wanted to believe in the version of her I had fallen for, not the one who was slowly dismantling me piece by piece. I spent hours agonizing over our conversations, replaying them in my head, trying to figure out what I did wrong to make her treat me that way. It never occurred to me that maybe it wasn't me at all, that maybe she was just a cruel person. The long phone calls that turned into arguments, the visits that were overshadowed by tension, the constant feeling of being judged and found wanting, it all added up. But I was 21 and stupid, and in love with an idea more than a person, perhaps. I poured all my energy into making it work, sacrificing my own happiness and well-being in the process. My friends in Austin noticed. They tried to tell me gently that something wasn't right, but I didn't listen. I was too deep and too committed to the idea of us overcoming the distance and the difficulties. I thought love was supposed to be hard, a struggle, but a worthwhile one. I didn't understand that love should be supportive and kind, not a constant battleground. I remember one time I drove 6 hours to see her for just 2 days, and she spent most of the time on her phone, barely paying attention to me. When I finally said something, she flipped it around, saying I was being needy and insecure and ruining our time together. I ended up apologizing to her for making her feel bad about being on her phone. That's how messed up things were. I lost myself in that relationship, molded myself into what I thought she wanted me to be, forgetting who I was before her. I stopped hanging out with my friends as much. I stopped pursuing my hobbies. My world revolved around her schedule, her moods, her demands. And all of this was happening while she was miles away, building a new life for herself, one that I wasn't fully a part of. I was stuck in Austin, going through the motions of my own life, while she was having new experiences, meeting new people, building new connections. I told myself it was just a phase, that she would come back to me fully when the distance closed. I ignored the little signs, the increasing gaps between texts, the shorter phone calls, the subtle shifts in her tone. I was desperate to make it work, terrified of the idea of losing her and having to face the wreckage of the relationship alone. I was so focused on trying to fix things on my end, on being the perfect long-distance boyfriend, that I didn't see what was happening on hers. I was blind to the obvious because I didn't want to see it. I wanted to believe in the fantasy we had created, not the harsh reality that was unfolding. And then the harsh reality finally hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't a slow realization, it was a sudden, brutal discovery. I found out she was cheating. It wasn't through a confession, it was through pure chance, a slip-up on her part. I was doing what I always did, scrolling through social media late at night, wishing she was here. And I saw something, a comment on a post from a guy I didn't recognize. It was innocent enough on the surface, but something felt off. I clicked on his profile just out of curiosity. And then I saw a picture of him and her together, looking way too close, way too comfortable. It wasn't just a friendly photo, it was a couple's photo, holding hands, looking into each other's eyes. My heart stopped. I scrolled further and saw more posts, pictures of them at parties, pictures of them on dates, pictures of them just hanging out, looking like they were building a life together. My life. All the excuses, all the rationalizations, all the times I told myself I was being paranoid, evaporated in an instant, replaced by a cold, hard truth. She wasn't just drifting away, she had already left. She had replaced me. It was like the ground had fallen out from under me. The pain was immense, but it was quickly followed by a burning anger unlike anything I had ever felt before. All the abuse, all the manipulation, all the gaslighting suddenly made sense. It wasn't just her personality, it was her covering her tracks. She was making me feel crazy so I wouldn't question her, so I wouldn't look too closely at what she was doing. The thought of how she had lied to me for how long I didn't even know made me feel sick to my stomach. All the love I had for her curdled into something bitter and poisonous. I felt like a fool, a complete and utter idiot for falling for her lies for so long, for investing so much of myself into someone who was capable of such betrayal. The pain of the cheating was compounded by the pain of the emotional abuse. It wasn't just that she cheated, it was that she cheated while treating me like dirt, making me feel like I was the problem. It was a double betrayal. I sat there in my apartment in Austin, Texas, staring at my phone, the screen illuminating my face, tears streaming down my cheeks. I wanted to scream, to smash something, to drive to her college and confront her. But then a different feeling started to creep in, a sense of calm, cold resolve. I had been disrespected for the last time. I wasn't going to beg or scream or plead. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart in front of her. She didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve to see the depth of the pain she had caused. I made a decision in that moment, a quiet vow to myself. She had hurt me deeply, but I wouldn't let her win. I wouldn't let her get away with it, not completely. I knew I couldn't just move on, not yet, not after everything. There was a quiet, simmering rage inside me, a desire for balance, for something to make up for the months of pain and the ultimate betrayal. It wasn't just about getting even, it was about reclaiming my power, my dignity that she had stripped away. It was about showing her that actions have consequences even when you're miles away. It was in that moment, sitting alone in my room in Austin, that the idea for revenge began to form. It wasn't a fully formed plan, yet just a seed, a dangerous, exciting possibility. I wiped away my tears, and a new expression settled on my face, one of determination. This wasn't the end of the story, it was just the beginning of a new chapter, one she wouldn't see coming. And as I sat there plotting my next move, I thought about how many stories like mine are out there, stories of people picking themselves up after being knocked down. Subscribe to Tales of Revenge channel for new revenge stories daily. The next few months became a blur of quiet obsession. I didn't break up with her immediately. I couldn't. I needed to pretend everything was fine, or at least fine enough to not raise suspicion while I gathered my information. It was excruciating talking to her, acting normal, knowing what she had done. Every conversation felt like a performance, a carefully constructed lie. She would ask about my day in Austin, and I would give her generic answers, my mind miles away, dissecting everything she said, looking for clues. The emotional toll was immense. I was living a double life, one where I was the loyal long-distance boyfriend, and another where I was a spy building a case against her. The pain of the betrayal was a constant companion, a dull ache that sometimes flared into sharp, agonizing bursts. There were days I just wanted to give up, to tell her I knew and walk away. But the thought of her getting away with it fueled me. The thought of her being happy with him while I was left broken was unbearable. So I soldiered on, pretending, smiling, nodding, saying I love you through gritted teeth. My mission was simple: gather everything I could about her life at college, especially details about him and their relationship. The Reddit post mentioned Snap Map, and that was gold. She still had her location turned on for me, or maybe she just forgot. Every time I saw her location update, I would make a mental note or quickly check where she was. Was she at the library with him, at a restaurant, at his fraternity house? Yes, he was in a fraternity. That detail from the Reddit post became very important later. I started paying close attention to the names of the girls she followed on Instagram and the guys she interacted with. Who were her friends? Who was he friends with? I was building a network in my head, connecting the dots. I became a phantom observer of her life, watching from the sidelines in Austin, Texas, piecing together the puzzle of her betrayal. I would go to the library or a coffee shop in Austin, find a quiet corner, and immerse myself in her digital footprint. Hours would pass unnoticed as I scoured social media profiles, cross-referenced names and locations, saved screenshots. It felt like I was putting together a detective's case file, just like the Reddit post described. I wrote everything down in a notebook: names, places, dates, times, details about their interactions. The more information I gathered, the clearer the picture became of how long this had been going on, how elaborate her lies were. It was painful information to collect. Each new detail was another stab wound. Seeing pictures of them together, living the life she should have been sharing with me, was agonizing. But I pushed through the pain, using it as fuel for my plan. I researched his fraternity, learning their colors, their symbols, their reputation on campus. I looked into the popular bars and hangout spots near her college. I learned the layout of the campus itself through online maps and virtual tour. I wanted to know her world better than she thought I did. I wanted to be everywhere she was without actually being there. It was an all-consuming project. It took up all my free time, all my mental energy. My friends noticed I was withdrawn, quiet, distracted. I lied to them, of course, telling them I was just stressed with school or dealing with family issues. I couldn't tell them the truth, not yet. They wouldn't understand the need for this level of meticulous planning, the depth of my desire for this specific kind of revenge. Most people would just break up, yell, block, delete, but that wasn't enough for me. That felt too easy, too clean. I wanted her to feel something. I wanted her to understand the anxiety, the paranoia, the feeling of losing control that she had inflicted on me. I didn't want a screaming match, I wanted a haunting. The process of gathering all this information was emotionally draining. It forced me to constantly confront the reality of her betrayal. There were nights I would just sit in my room in Austin staring at the wall, tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed by the pain and the unfairness of it all. Like I was drowning in sorrow and anger. This was my rock bottom, the lowest point during this process. It wasn't a single event, but a prolonged period of intense emotional suffering, fueled by the constant exposure to her deceit. Every screenshot I saved, every location I noted, was a reminder of how she had broken my trust, how she had made a fool of me. I questioned everything about our relationship, replaying every conversation, every interaction, searching for the signs I had missed. How could I have been so blind, so naive? The self-blame was almost as debilitating as the pain of the betrayal itself. I felt like a failure, a complete and utter failure in love and in judgment, but even in the depths of that despair, the desire for revenge remained. It was a cold anchor in the storm of my emotions, a steady point of focus. It gave me a purpose, something to work towards, something to channel all this negative energy into. It was the only thing that kept me from completely falling apart. I knew that executing this plan would be difficult, that there were risks involved, but the thought of her facing some consequence for her actions was enough to keep me going. I wasn't planning anything physical or illegal, just something that would mess with her head, something that would make her question her own reality, just like she had made me question mine. This period of struggle, of painstakingly collecting information and battling my own demons, felt endless. It was a lonely fight waged in the quiet confines of my Austin apartment, but with every piece of information I gathered, I felt a tiny flicker of power, returning a sense of control over a situation where I had felt utterly powerless. It was a slow, arduous climb out of the pit of despair, but I was determined to reach the top. I spent hours researching how to create fake social media accounts, how to make them look legitimate, how to cover my tracks online. I was learning a whole new skill set born out of pain and a thirst for retribution. It was a dark path, but one I felt compelled to walk down. I knew I was changing, becoming someone I didn't recognize, but I didn't care. The old Ethan, the one who was easily hurt and manipulated, was gone, replaced by someone colder, someone more calculating. Someone who was ready to strike back. My mind was a whirlwind of plans and possibilities, constantly refining the details of my revenge. It was like a complex puzzle, and I was meticulously placing each piece into position. The image of her panic, confused, facing the consequences of her actions, was the only thing that brought me any sense of satisfaction during this difficult time. And through it all, the pain, the planning, the quiet obsession, I held onto the knowledge that I was working towards a goal. Subscribe to Tales of Revenge channel for new revenge stories daily. Finally, after months of planning and preparing, the time came to put my revenge into motion. I had meticulously gathered every piece of information I needed. I knew the names of her boyfriend's fraternity brothers. I knew the bars he frequented, the coffee shops they went to, the layout of their campus. I had created a fake Instagram account. I made it look like a legitimate account belonging to a guy in his fraternity. I used generic photos I found online and gave it a plausible sounding name. It was important that it seemed real, that it wouldn't raise any immediate red flags. I spent days setting it up, following other students from her university, interacting with their posts just enough to make the account look active and real. This was the vessel for my revenge, the Trojan horse that would deliver the carefully crafted message. The initial plan was simple but required precision. I needed to insert myself into their world without them ever knowing it was me, Ethan Miller, in Austin, Texas, pulling the strings. I decided to start by making contact with her boyfriend, not directly, but in a way that would eventually get back to her. I used the fake account to message myself. It sounds strange, I know, but it was a crucial step. I crafted a message from the perspective of a random guy who supposedly had information about her boyfriend cheating. The message I sent to myself from the fake account read something like, "Hey, I know this is random, but I think your boyfriend is cheating on you. I have proof. It sounds crazy, I know, but I saw him at XYZ bar the other night with another girl and heard him talking about you." I then took a screenshot of this message I sent to myself. This screenshot was the bait. I carefully edited it to make it look like a genuine message I had received from a concerned stranger. I wanted it to seem like someone unconnected to me, someone from her university, had reached out. Then I sent that screenshot to her. My heart was pounding as I typed the message to her, attaching the image. "Hey, what is this? I just got this message from some random guy. Do you know who this is?" I played dumb, acted confused and hurt. I watched her response with bated breath. Her reaction was exactly what I expected. She panicked. Immediately, she went on the defensive. She started demanding that I block the account, that I ignore the message, that it was just some random person trying to stir up trouble. She denied everything, of course, but her denial lacked conviction. It was frantic, desperate. She was visibly shaken even through text messages. She was worried that I would actually believe it or that I would somehow investigate further. Her fear was palpable, and it was exactly what I wanted to see. It was proof that I had hit a nerve. This first step was just the beginning of dismantling her carefully constructed lies. She kept trying to convince me that it was nothing, that the person who sent the message was probably just crazy or mistaken. She even tried to turn it back on me, asking why I would even listen to something like that, implying that I didn't trust her. The classic gaslighting technique, attempting to make me feel guilty for her actions. But this time it didn't work. I knew the truth, and her panicked reaction only confirmed it. I continued to play the role of the confused and slightly suspicious boyfriend, but I didn't push too hard. I let her think she had managed to convince me, or at least smooth things over for now. This gave me the opening I needed for the next phase of my plan. I needed to make the fake account more convincing. I needed to make the threat feel more real. I spent hours crafting the next message from the fake account. This one would be the centerpiece of my revenge, the message that would detail everything and make her boyfriend believe he was being stalked. I drew upon all the information I had gathered over the past months. I included the name of the bar he frequented, the names of the girls he followed on social media, details about his fraternity, details about his daily routine. I made it sound like the person sending the message had been watching him, had been following his movements. It was a chilling message designed to instill fear and paranoia. I wrote it from the perspective of someone who had observed him, someone who knew things they shouldn't know. I mentioned specific dates, specific times, specific locations where I knew he had been with other girls. I mentioned the names of the girls I had seen in photos with him. I wove in details about his routine, things I had pieced together from her casual comments or his social media posts. It was a comprehensive dossier of his cheating and his life, presented in a way that suggested constant surveillance. I pored over every word, every phrase, making sure it sounded believable and terrifying. This wasn't just about exposing the cheating anymore, it was about making him feel the same sense of unease and vulnerability that she had made me feel for months. It was about turning the tables, making the hunter feel like the hunted. The message was long, detailed, and filled with specific facts. It wasn't vague accusations, it was concrete, undeniable evidence presented in a terrifying context. I mentioned seeing him at the Rusty Mug last Friday night with a blonde girl from the sorority house on Maple Street. I mentioned seeing him leaving the library with a girl in a blue backpack on Tuesday afternoon. I mentioned the names Sarah and Jessica, two names I had seen him interacting with online. I mentioned his fraternity's upcoming event, describing details I had gleaned from their public social media. It was a tapestry of truth woven with threads of fabricated surveillance. I wanted him to read it and feel a cold dread wash over him, to feel like walls were closing in. Once the message was perfect, I sent it from the fake account. This time I didn't send it to myself. This time I sent it directly to him. I knew he would see it. I knew he would react. And I knew that reaction would eventually get back to her one way or another. What happened next exceeded my expectations. According to what I later pieced together through mutual acquaintances and her panicked attempts to contact me, he completely spiraled. The message terrified him. He genuinely believed he was being stalked. The level of detail was too specific, too accurate for it to be a random threat. He didn't connect it to her or to me. He thought some stranger was watching him. The paranoia set in hard. He started looking over his shoulder, becoming jumpy and anxious. He couldn't explain how someone knew so much about his life. The feeling of being watched, the feeling of having his secrets exposed, must have been unbearable. The guilt of the cheating combined with the fear of being stalked pushed him over the edge. He started acting erratically. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't focus on school. He was consumed by fear. And then, according to her panicked calls to me trying to understand what was going on, he cracked. He confessed everything, not just the cheating with the girls I had mentioned, but likely more too. The pressure of the supposed stalker became too much to bear, and he spilled his guts. He didn't confess to her, he confessed to the campus police. Convinced someone was after him, he went to them seeking protection. He told them about the message, the details, the feeling of being watched. He probably hoped they would catch this phantom stalker and make the terrifying surveillance stop. He had no idea that the person he was confessing about was the person who had orchestrated the whole thing. He had no idea that the proof of his cheating presented by the stalker was the evidence collected by the very person he had betrayed. The irony was thick and deeply satisfying. The revenge wasn't loud or explosive, it was quiet psychological warfare waged from a distance from my apartment in Austin, Texas, and it worked perfectly. He was terrified, exposed, and ultimately led by his own fear to confess his wrongdoings. She was caught in the crossfire, forced to confront his actions and the fallout. She called me frantic, trying to understand how this could happen, who this person was. I continued to play the role of the confused ex-boyfriend, worried about her being caught up in something dangerous. I offered fake sympathy, feigned concern, asked questions I already knew the answers to. It was the final layer of my deception, and it was thrilling. She never suspected me, not for a second. Why would she? I was hundreds of miles away in Austin, the loyal boyfriend she had cheated on. The idea that I could orchestrate something like this from a distance was probably beyond her comprehension. She probably assumed I was heartbroken and pathetic, incapable of anything more than moping. That was her mistake. She underestimated me, and that underestimation led to her boyfriend's downfall and the exposure of her lies. Nothing ever came of his confession to the police as far as I know. There was no stalker to catch, just a fake social media account and a carefully constructed message. The police probably dismissed his claims as paranoia fueled by guilt. He never figured out it was me. She never figured out it was me. The secret remained safe, locked away in my mind. The satisfaction of knowing that I had orchestrated his downfall, their chaos, was immense. It wasn't the kind of satisfaction that brought complete peace, but it brought a sense of closure, a feeling that I had finally righted a wrong. I had taken back some of the power she had stolen from me. The relationship ended, of course, after all that happened. There was no coming back from it. He was exposed, she was exposed, and I was finally free. But the ghost of the fake account, the memory of his terror and her panic, remained. It was a constant reminder of what I was capable of. To this day, he still tries to reach out, sometimes sending long, rambling messages filled with apologies and regrets. He's probably still haunted by the memory of the supposed stalker, completely unaware that the source of his terror was the person he had betrayed. I never respond. I have nothing to say to him. My revenge was complete, and it was silent and effective. I moved on with my life in Austin, Texas, focused on healing and building something better. But every now and then I remember the hours spent collecting receipts, the thrill of creating the fake account, the satisfaction of sending that final message. It's a dark part of my past, but it's also a reminder of my own strength and resilience. I didn't choose a conventional breakup, I chose a haunting, and I succeeded. He still has no idea that the random frat bro who exposed him was me the whole damn time. Subscribe to Tales of Revenge channel for new revenge stories daily.